AfCFTA is a Pan-African multilateral financial institution which is fully committed to supporting the implementation of the AfCFTA. We believe that we need to really work with all the players at the national level, at the regional level, and at the continental level. If I may add, even at the sub-national level, we have also put in place some initiatives under the African Sub-Sovereign Conference Network, where we engage with provinces, with municipalities, with counties, to ensure that the AfCFTA is actually taken to the grassroots. And this will actually speak to some of the issues that we've been talking about, the need to support women, SMEs, the smallholder farmers. These players are at the grassroots level. At AfCFTA, we've put in place a number of interventions, financial and non-financing interventions. I would like to just highlight that over the past 4 years, we've disbursed over 70 billion US dollars to support trade. And we will continue to do that under probably our new strategic plan. We have committed about 20 billion in the previous years, but under the current structure, we are actually going to double it to 40 billion by 2026 to support intra-African trade under the AfCFTA. And we have put in place a number of initiatives to actually ensure that people can access that funding. One of the key instruments that you need to probably focus on, that is very relevant to the AfCFTA strategies, is the adjustment fund. It's a 10 billion adjustment fund that we have put together with the AfCFTA Secretariat as mandated by the heads of states and the ministers of trade. And the fund is now commenced operation, especially the credit fund and the general fund. So we are actually looking at disbursing the first transaction starting this year.
GIZ, of course, is the implementing partner of the German government, and our initiatives and support towards the AfCFTA implementation cut across not just the AfCFTA Secretariat, but the RECs as well as the national governments. We have various initiatives, and they will come across as quite similar to what other development partners are doing. But initially, we began with the support towards the Secretariat, looking at the initiatives and developing work plans together and working towards the actual negotiations support to the different national state parties. The second part of this has been the support of not just the national governments, but their representation at the RECs. Of course, the RECs are the building blocks of the AfCFTA, and this support covers ECOWAS, covers SADC, covers EAC. This support extends to the national governments, the ones that are really responsible for the negotiation of their own positions, and also of the implementation of their own values, meaning that we have more than one representation countries, so we have about 10 of these that GIZ supports. It doesn't mean that we do not support beyond the 10 countries. We do this through the EU Technical Assistance Fund, which my colleague in the audience, Seku, heads. And through this EU TAF, we have two initiatives. One where we collaborate with the AUC and the AfCFTA Secretariat, developing work plans. And the second part of this is through the ad hoc mechanism that is responsible for receiving demand-driven needs from national governments, from regional economic communities, and also from the private sector within these national governments.
I think we all agree that the AfCFTA is certainly more than just a trade agreement. I think the really objective is to push for industrialization. In a nutshell, for the continent to produce more of what it consumes. And we see a lot of potential in the AfCFTA in contributing this to the SDGs. I think that's why UNDP has now developed, through our regional portfolio and country offices, a number of interventions that are linked to the implementation of the AfCFTA, and most particularly private sector development. And we also have here a number of our colleagues from country offices that are actually leading the work from the ground that could also engage on bilateral the respective countries. Now, what we are seeing, what we have been learning is that there is a room for development partners, of course, to come into the AfCFTA. I see a lot of gaps and lessons learned when it comes to knowledge generation. I think institutions such as UN, ECA, UNCTAD are doing quite a great job in terms of knowledge generation. And at UNDP, we are actually leveraging those knowledge to implement in terms of recommendations and others.
Regardless of the AfCFTA agreement, those barriers existed before and they are ongoing. So it's not that we find out suddenly that we had issues with political will, with industrialization. I think that's the main point indeed. Komi made it, and I would like to reiterate it. When UNCTAD engaged with countries, and there's many of you that we are engaged with, what we found is that there's a need for identifying what kind of products and services we're talking about. If we want to foster domestic trade and intra-regional trade, you need to know what exactly you are going to export or sell, within the countries.
Mao Africa is helping buyers from around the globe to be able to source handmade or handcraft products from the continent, from different makers or artisans, as we call them here in Kenya. So I'm actually also a beneficiary of the e-trade, e-readiness program by UNACTAD. So it's really, and a lot of other many women within the continent. And in regards to AfCFTA implementation, as Maui is helping buyers source from the continent, and as a startup, what we are trying to do is help people who are makers from different parts of the country to be able to access wider markets. One of the issues most SMEs have is accessing wider markets. So even as Mao, when we're trying to consolidate all these makers from Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, Nigeria, one of the issues we have is the movement of goods from Uganda to Kenya or South Africa for consolidation for it to be shipped, which I think is something that after the AfCFTA is going to help with the implementation. So the logistics cost, which is very, very expensive due to the customs cost. So the issue of the tariffs, the issue of the taxes, the issue of just the movement of goods and the infrastructure, making that logistics being so expensive is an issue that a lot of SMEs are facing when it comes to e-commerce. And specifically, as Maui is focusing on the handicraft sector, and we are looking to ensure women businesses, youth are participating in this trade. The handicraft sector is majorly dominated. Actually, 70% is done by women and youth.
Advancement of regional integration has been and is at the core of the bank's existence even. All of the interventions, all of the projects that we do at the bank are actually geared towards advancing regional integration, and we see that as one of the pathways towards the development of the continent, and it's actually part of our mission as the African Development Bank. I just wanted to highlight to all the participants here that we have as the bank what we call country strategy papers and regional integration strategic papers, which seek to program the bank's interventions in countries and in regional economic communities. So country strategic papers is where for each and every country we program our interventions for 5 years with, of course, a midterm review where we can, see what's working, what isn't. And as part of those strategic papers, we have what we call indicative operations program, where we actually program what projects we're going to do for that particular for that particular country and for that particular regional economic community. And when we talk about mainstreaming of AfCFTA, projects, programs, and interventions, I think one of the key issues that we need to address is having countries mainstream AfCFTA implementation and everything else that is related to AfCFTA in their national development plans, and that way it is actually easier for us as the bank to include that in the indicative operations programs.